Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Deanne Conrad, Community Relations Coordinator for the Sioux Falls School District. How many of you can agree parenting is difficult? Well, guess what? Being a child is difficult as well, especially those adolescent and teen years. And if you've ever found yourself at odds with your child, you're going to want to listen in on this. This month, our Avera Family Forum, we're going to have tips for parents to help them set age-appropriate boundaries for their children. Studies actually show that when parents set expectations and clear, measurable boundaries, our kids actually develop better social skills, they feel more secure, they can self-regulate when needed, and they're going to have a better chance at being resilient when life comes their way and throws them a curveball. So let's get started. Each of our guests is going to introduce themselves, and first of all, let's start with Twyla.
Hello, my name is Twyla Perkinson. I am one of the child life specialists at Avera McKinnon in the Children's Unit.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us. I'm Dave Irmer. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist and also the clinical vice president at Avera Behavioral Health.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Jackie Pasica. I am the principal at Horace Mann Elementary in the Sioux Falls School District, and we are the behavior program in the school district.
So we're glad to have all of you here today, and I think we can all relate as parents ourselves that there is at some point in life kind of that back and forth battle with boundaries and setting boundaries. Why do we need boundaries as a whole? I mean, it'd be nice to just live my life the way I want to live it, but why do we need boundaries? Dr. Irmer, you want to jump in on that right away?
It's a life skill. It teaches self-control. It's needed for when you go through life. If you have a job, you better be able to
show up on time.
100%. You need to be able to work within a set of boundaries. You don't ever escape that, and it helps with self-esteem, helps decrease anxiety. It gives structure to your life, so it just has many benefits.
When people know what's expected of them, they have a better ability to color within the lines, maybe so to speak. And that coloring within the lines, Twyla, you work a lot with toddlers and the younger groups of people. Tell me a little bit about boundary setting for parents. If we work through this in sort of like okay, we're going to chunk it down and talk about elementary aged kids or even toddlers, and then maybe move to the more middle school age and high school age. We're going to hit that all through this program, but in the elementary age or the toddler age, where we're first setting rules for kids, what's sort of some of those rules? We're kind of creating boundaries for kids whenever. Don't touch that. You need to do this instead. But what's some of the work that you do with families?
When I think about our youngest kids, you think your toddlers, your preschoolers, and the first thing as a caregiver, you'll think safety. You know, do not run out into the street. Hold my hand when you're crossing the street. Maybe you've already set some of the boundaries of you're walking, your child's riding the bike, you can go to the end of the block, but please wait.
Yes.
And so safety comes first of mind, what you're trying to help with your kids to be successful and to know about, oh, this is important to me.
Right, and that probably is one of the very first things we do as parents, because we're saying, oh, that's hot, don't touch that. So we can put those boundaries out there. But I think something we talked about also, why are we setting boundaries? It's because that safety component, but sometimes we don't go the extra mile and explain why we only want them to go to the end of the block.
Yes, yeah. Our youngest kids just have less life experience. And so they don't know about running out into traffic is certainly a dangerous topic. They don't know that you're going to need to hold two hands on a cup while somebody's pouring, or hold two hands on the pitcher. And so if we can let them know why we're doing this, or let mommy help you, then it will really help them to feel good about themselves of, I was able to listen, I'm able to do the things, and my mom, dad want to keep me safe.
Yeah, and I think as parents, we of course all want that for our children. Is that something, it's innate, seems like it should be innate, we don't want our kids to be harming themselves, that kind of thing. But what kind of work do you do with families, Dr. Ermer, then to help solidify that?
Well, we work on just what expectations should be. I think it's very appropriate to explain why, but it does show the hierarchy in the family. I'm in charge and I'm making the rules. You try to explain why, but at the end of the day, if there's disagreement, this is the rule and I'm in charge. It also shows kids, even if the kids get mad at you with boundaries, it shows you care. You're investing time in your child's well-being, and they may not thank you at the moment, especially as they get older and you're putting in curfews, but it shows you care, and believe me, just working with families where kids don't have that involvement, they notice that. They notice where other families are, hey, we've got all these expectations. So it really is helping. It's helping in so many ways. It helps the family altogether.
Sure. So one of the things we do in our system in the school district is when students have a difficult time with boundaries and can't identify what the expectations are for them or hold to those expectations, they might come to Horace Mann, which is our program where we're teaching behavior skills and life skills. And family values and sort of set school values, that kind of thing. So Jackie, talk a little bit about your work in the elementary school and sort of what we're doing in the schools to help students understand expectations and rise to them.
Yes. Well, I love that beautiful piece, right? That we talked about those early learners haven't had those opportunities. So how are we providing opportunities in that consistent practice and those pieces? I like to think of it in two pieces, right? We have our proactive ability and we have our reactive ability. And we want to have a system for both of those approaches. And when I love to say, let's live in prevention and die in correction. So how can we be so in that prevention mode? Because like you said, we need to teach those safety boundaries. So there are boundaries all over the place, right? I need to wear a seatbelt in the car to be safe. I need to stop at a red light so I don't hurt someone or someone else, right? So how are we thinking about these in schools? And in the proactive way, right, how are we teaching those? So we can talk about values. We've really had training in restorative practices and our Boys Town, and both of those have a lot of prevention ways. Restorative practice has really shaped my thinking and my mind in those core values. So at school, you'll see most schools will have a slogan, SOAR, safety, ownership, acceptance, and respect. And then we can always come back to those values and what we're teaching. So if we know a student predictably is having a hard time with safe hands, we'll teach that in a neutral time, but then in response, we can come back to that same thing and talk about safety after that. And our students should be able to identify, right, that that's a safety piece. Also,
so those are considered to be sort of values at school. If we
Yes.
say SOAR, you said safety,
ownership,
ownership,
acceptance, and respect.
Okay,
Yes.
so, and many of our schools have an acronym.
Yes.
It might not be SOAR, but it might be something.
Pause. Yes, there's all different ones, yeah.
To go along with the theme of the school or
Yes.
the mascot or
Right.
what have you.
Yep.
To just solidify that, because then it's easy for the kids to remember, reflect.
Yes. So our students should be able to tell you those 4 words, right? And I can think of an example in my office the other day. In that response, I had a few friends join us, not for a typical behavior they've been displaying, but they came in, they all sat down around the table, and we actually could talk about what was going on. Then they all could answer immediately that they broke the rule of safety. And I always say, well, what's the number 1 at Horace Mann? And they'll say safety, which was really cool because previously they had all bounced out. We would be in that conversation, we'd be in problem solving, and they would have to leave the office and come back in to do it over again. But that's just that shaping, because we've been consistent on that's our procedure, right? We're always going to go back to our values. We will always problem solve together, and then we will practice. So they know those steps. And then we got to the hard part when we talk about boundaries of, well, gosh, we did this. Now we got to talk about the consequence. And they all said, okay. And they practiced and they followed through on the consequence, which was a shaping, because previously we couldn't even get to the conversation. Then we got to the conversation, but couldn't get to the consequence. And now we got to the consequence. So it's that shaping process that we did in response, but also at the same time, we're proactively teaching all these pieces in class.
Right. And so at the beginning of the year, that interaction may have looked a whole lot different
Yes.
than it did
Yes.
just recently
Yes.
for those students. So growing, and it is a growth process, right? And parents are not always perfect. They might be lashing out or getting angry at their child when boundaries are not met or they're not being safe. And we talked a little bit about that as we were preparing for this program, that perfection shouldn't really be the expectation.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
No, we all make mistakes. And,
Not attainable.
we talk about what's appropriate. We all can give examples of making mistakes. I think it's, especially in any age, kids, you can apologize. Hey, I'm sorry, I yelled at you, but I was angry because of this, but I shouldn't have yelled. And this is what I'll try to do next time. And just, use the same skills that you're teaching the kids. Be a role model. I'm
human.
Right, and I'm going to do the same thing I'm expecting of you. I'm going to apologize. I'm going to try to do better.
I know, just last week I was driving in the car on the way, and I didn't use my tool belt, right? I had used the yelling method, which gives me a tiny bit of reprieve, but that's only a Band-Aid on the internal wound, right, where my child at home had a skill, but I used the yelling method, which got us nowhere. So she's crying as I leave, then I'm crying on the way to work, and I'm like, I did not do a good job, right? So coming back to it and being able then later to have that conversation of, here are our core family values, how can we do this? But knowing that that's a skill she missed, how am I going to teach that at another time to be proactive so we don't get ourselves in that same screaming match again?
Right. And as parents, there are so many opportunities for us to take to set boundaries and priorities, values for our family, but sometimes we don't think about it in that respect. I guess I don't. Like, yes, I told my kids, don't touch that. It's breakable or whatever the case is. But I didn't really think of it as boundary setting, but that really is what it is.
And even modeling the please and thank you, being those role models
Absolutely.
Thank you for moving your dish to the counter for me. Thank you that you did the chores without me asking.
Sure.
So setting again some of those please and thank yous and what it is to be a part of a family.
Yeah, being that role model. And if you expect something from your kids, you should model it. When my kids were getting of driving age, I made sure I didn't go through stop signs. It made me a better driver. I got to make sure I'm that role model driver. Or if you say no phones at the dinner table and you're talking, it's like, you need to not just say the boundaries, you've got to model those also.
Behaviors.
Walk the talk.
Yeah, for me, those values at school and how we approach those at school have changed my home life too, where we do, as a family this summer, we came up with what our Pasica core family values would be, and it is so fun to hear a 3-year-old be able to list off fortitude, kindness, and list off the
Your
5.
3-year-old knows fortitude?
He does. I know, it's so crazy. Because then each month we focus on one, and that's our question at dinner is, how did you use fortitude tonight? Or how did you use kindness? Whichever that core family value is. And so that has just been so fun to see that they can learn these words and use them. So this morning, even because I knew I was coming here, I asked them, I said, what do you like about the core family values? And my 7-year-old said, well, it helps me because if I don't know one, I can use it at school. I was like, I didn't even think of. And then I was like,
you're being a model.
Yeah, and I said, what makes a good mom and dad? Like, what makes a good mommy and daddy? And my 5-year-old and 3-year-old both started listing off our values. Like, that's what they said back to us, and it was so cool. Then I said, well, what does it mean to be kind? The 3-year-old, being patient, or he didn't say patient, he said sharing, and then my 5-year-old had said teamwork, and I was like, well, what is teamwork? And she said, it's doing what you mean. And I was like, okay, so you guys are taking these things we talk a lot about all the time and the investment we're putting in, and you are hearing that. So it was just a cool moment of these things can be taught, but again, we have to do it in that proactive way. So then when we do get to those tough moments, we can come back to that core family value. Like my 7-year-old, he had we had just said, oh, we're so excited for parent-teacher conferences, we can't wait. And to our shock, he says, well, it'll be a little bit bad and a little bit good. And I was like, well, you're my oldest. Like, I'm surprised that this is what you're saying. And he then told us about an issue he had lining up for recess. And we praised that honest core family value. You were honest. That is so great. But then we talked boundary. You still made a wrong choice. We're still going to follow through. There'll be a small consequence, but you honored that family value. Think about that and think about how then we could work together and we can talk about it so you don't do it again.
Right.
So we just really want to model what we're doing.
When I take your point, you're not going to have these discussions when it's heated, when it's people are angry. You're like, let's talk about this later, because I don't think a lot gets accomplished, especially in adolescent. Even kids, if they're yelling, we're going to talk about this later. When at a calm moment, you go over these things. You don't do it in that high emotional state.
Is it ever too late? Like if maybe we didn't identify that we're talking about, when I say this is a boundary, and I'm setting a boundary because we have family values and that type of thing. Is it ever, as a parent, too late to start having this conversation and identifying what the expectations are? I mean, if we missed this boat when they were toddlers.
Yeah. Well, again, the life experience. You've got a long time, the preschool ages, the early school age, to continue. So I don't think it's too late to start.
Right.
It's not. No, I think if you felt like you haven't set the boundaries you wanted as a family and those core values, it's start now.
Yeah, and those boundaries can be something as simple at the elementary or toddler ages: bedtime,
Yes.
Routines,
Yes.
and identifying, hey, this is a boundary. This isn't just another rule I'm telling you because I am in charge and I am the mom, or whatever. But what are some of those very basic ways that parents can start out when their kids are really young so like bedtime,
Bedtime is one, mealtime is another, that you will eat together as a family. You'll try to be there at the table, and someone is not off in the living room eating. Or I've had some of my friends say, I'm not a short order cook. This is what we're having tonight. And so if you're taking one bite of those vegetables and you're, it's not my favorite, thank you for trying, And bedtime, just recognizing and having a little bit of buy-in from the kids as well. Would you like to read books first? Would you like to do jammies first? Brush teeth? These are the things we're going to do, but you help me to know what you'd like to do first.
I like that very much. First of all, we're going to be clear. We're going to say, these are the things we're doing. Now you choose, and you get a choice in what you want to do first, second, and third. And that's really building, okay, we're going to do all three of those things, but you can choose the order, and giving them the flexibility maybe to do that.
Yes.
That's great. So, gosh, middle schoolers, I think teachers and parents of middle schoolers are destined for sainthood. I don't know. That seemed to be the hardest age for me to parent, is that middle school age when they're identifying independence. And you know what? We want our kids to be independent. But gosh, there seemed to be a lot of push and pull in that time frame. Why is that?
Well, I think it goes to peer acceptance becomes number one over parent expectations and parent approval. They want to be, you get to that, it's sort of that stage where they just have to be accepted by their peers. And at times, unfortunately, kids are willing to do things they know aren't the best choices to be accepted by their peers. So it's a tough time.
Yeah, definitely that adolescent age where they're identifying, okay, I could follow the rules and do what my parents said, but I'm being encouraged from, my classmates, or my classmates laugh when I do this, and so I want to be part of their friend group or whatever. Do you see like the boundaries get extended a bit when kids get a little older, those upper elementary and preteen years?
Yeah, and I think a beautiful part of that phase of life too is that they're gaining more and more abilities to be doing things independently, right? We're not having to put their shirt on anymore or help them button up, right? We're past that phase. So it's also this like teetering that line of wanting the independence. So I think going back and also teaching, like, we have to teach you how to be independent. We have to teach you how to do these things so then you can soar while you're out there doing that independently. That's a huge piece that I think of. And I think of, like putting it in sports terms, what's the junior varsity of letting you go independently and then giving you the varsity jersey to be out there doing things more and more independently. So how can we shape that as we go?
But you have to earn the varsity jersey.
Yes.
You really do.
It's not just because you hit this age that you...
Nobody should automatically be driving when they're a certain, well, in South Dakota it's like 14 or something.
Yeah.
But the point is, you've got to, that's a huge responsibility. that's the legal age, but you've got to earn that. And
Right,
that's the
right.
varsity probably.
So it can feel like, sometimes parents will want to do things and continue to do things for their kids, and kind of that helicopter parenting kind of thing. It's hard to let go. Why do we need to, as parents, give them that time for independence?
Well, it's just part of that, giving that independence go, because in short order they're going to be on their own, and you want them to have those skills to make good decisions independently. It helps their self-esteem. If you have a parent making all the decisions, you could feel like maybe they don't think I'm capable of making good decisions. My parents don't even think I'm worthy of making good decisions. So it's I think the boundaries as you get older, it's that moving target. What have you earned? You've done a great job. Let's give you one more piece of independence. You've done a great job. Keep going. And I think it's really rewarding for both the parent and the kid to see that, hey, we're letting them do this on their own, and they're doing a great job. Sometimes you have to pull it back in if they make a mistake, but you need to make the rules very clear. This is you can't just say, hey, you've lost the car, and it's like, well, what does that mean? Like indefinitely? No, you've lost the car until A, B, and C happens. Those kind of things. And
Sure.
If you got a speeding ticket or something, I think the police actually take your license away anyway.
Yeah.
But,
At that age, yeah.
But I mean, the point is, it's a moving target, and I always look at working with that. It's parenting, but it's a little bit of mediation. It's like, hey, let's discuss. These are important family values for us. These are ones that are non-negotiable. Like, I don't know, family dinners, our curfew is this time. This is something we aren't willing to negotiate on. But we're willing to talk about some of these other things. And then if you do better, maybe we'll move the curfew later or something like that.
Right. Do kids still have curfews today? I mean, my kids do, but back in the day, that curfew was like, you would never dream of, going past the curfew time
Right.
in my parents' house. And we had a couple of instances, and you didn't have cell phones back then to call and say, I'm going to be late because of this. And so I just remember like opening the door and thinking, oh my gosh, the wrath will fall because I'm late. And in some cases, if there was not a good reason, maybe the wrath did fall and I didn't get to go out the next time. But I feel like there were so many clear boundaries when I was growing up, and with parenting now, it's like, you have to go to bed at this time, but you probably have your phone with you, or you have a TV in your room or something like that. And we've just, as a society, maybe become a little more lax. Is that harder, do you think, for kids to live in that world?
I do think when we see those faults of where their things aren't clear, consistent, and predictable, even at school, if we're not following our flow chart or we're not doing those things right, that creates this confusion for students, and we're not sticking to that clearest kind. I do, when I listen to the middle school and high school ones of that phone, and I know you guys have done presentations on that, but that is one that we're already researching and wanting to look into, because we know that that's where they get to the world, that's how they get to those things. So how are we already setting them up to succeed? And I think the more that you can start those boundaries and being consistent and coming back to them and being predictable, it will set your child up for success.
Well, what's a kid going to think if they're in that preteen mode right now, or that age category, and then their parent comes back and says, okay, hey, we're going to start with some boundaries? That can be shocking.
Well, and that's where you sit down and you do talk it back and forth. What do these are my expectations. How do you think we should do this? I also, going back to the TV and the phone in the bedroom, our TV and the phone in the bedroom, we discourage that, even for adults.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be where you sleep, and having a TV and the phone in there. And plus, you've got unlimited access to the world if you have a phone in your bedroom. And most, I know that a lot of organizations recommend, if you're going to have a phone, you keep it in charging in the kitchen or something, not with you.
Yes. So we would encourage that, and we see kids coming to school without sleep, dysregulated, that type of thing.
Or have gotten themselves in late night trouble on the social medias, and then that's coming to schools and going through that. So just really having those strong boundaries of, can you start with some limited ability of social media and proving that you've scored that, you're earning that varsity jersey, as we've talked about. So really thinking about that, because as parents, that is something harder to monitor. So how are we monitoring, but then growing their capacity to be able to use it?
But then also demonstrating as parent, then you shouldn't have a TV in your bedroom.
Right.
You shouldn't have your phone there either. And if there's a reason that you need to, for whatever purpose, maybe you're on call, you're a medical professional, something like that, explaining that
Exactly.
situation.
I'd
I have it in my room because I'm expected to answer call if needed. And so even that, you might need to be extremely clear on that. Well, why do you have your phone?
And I had to explain that. I go, I have a phone because people might call me late at night
Right.
and have
Need
medical.
my help.
Yes, and so I have to have it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the boundaries also, especially I think it's important even with young kids, it's important that parents respect some of their adolescents' autonomy. So it's a two-way street with the boundaries. You may say, I'm going to give you privacy, I'm going to knock. It's safety versus that independence. I'm going to knock on your door before I come in. The social media piece is hard. I think a younger kid, you might say, yeah, I'm going to let you do this, but I'm going to, and make it clear up front, I'm going to have access to what you're saying. And maybe as they get older, not so much, but I think it's important. And then I have real life, kids sneaking alcohol into the room. All of a sudden, we're going to check your, you might have lost some of that. That
autonomy or that privacy.
Because you're sneaking alcohol into your room, so we're going to check.
Right. So I was kind of one of when this is now going on 10 years, I guess, that when my kids were getting into the middle school, high school age, Snapchat was new. And I said, no, we're not having Snapchat until you're a freshman in high school. And then that was for my oldest, and she proved then that she had the ability to regulate use and that kind of thing. Then my middle one, and she moved through that time period as well. And I held true, because it's easy when the third kid, there's a little bit of pressure like, oh, come on, Mom, let me, whatever. I did hold true to that and said, no, when you're a freshman. And successful. We made it through that, and guess what? The sun rose the next day, even though I had to let go when they reached that freshman mark, and they couldn't access that particular social media until I said you're of age, and that was an arbitrary age that I chose, but I feel pretty successful with that, and they survived.
And good job, Mama. You said something that resonates with me too, right? We're a little bit of a different parent with 1 and 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And 3, I don't want to say it's all my fault as the parent, because the older siblings help me enable the youngest one too.
Sure.
So we're a collective family on that enabling for the youngest.
Yeah.
But it all is an eye-opening experience when you realize that last one, you have to hold same boundaries, or you have to teach those boundaries too, and have something similar in place. I think that is a huge learning curve I'm still working through and doing too, because I want to be like, oh no, you don't need to go to your room. Yes, same consequence needs to happen when you're having those behaviors too.
Right.
So it's a little bit tricky on that third one.
Yes, and the other one, I made a rule that my kids had to be in music in high school. I don't care whatever sports you want to do or other activities, but you will be involved in music. Because some of my own personal relationships that have run the test of time, 35 years, those are my people. Those are still my people. And I want that for my kids. I want them to have those values that are required to be part of, the music group. And sports is just, we're gonna be doing that in our family. But music, I wanted something, them to have that experience as well. And it wasn't easy for the third one, but he's finishing out his senior year and in the choir. And guess what? It's not hurting him one darn bit.
Right.
It's maybe not what he would have chosen for himself, but now my other 2 out of school are saying, gosh, I really miss band. I'm so glad you made me do that. I'm like, wow,
Yes.
this is a little bit of incentive for Mom to say, okay, I know that was hard for them to do, maybe not what they wanted to do, but now they're seeing the value of that, and so that's been very cool. When teens and parents are, we just need to expect they're going to be
That's
at
part of
odds,
normal development.
right?
Someone says, "Hey, we're having conflicts with my teenager." You're like, "Good, that's normal development." You know, not that
Yes.
it's good. It's not good, but you
Right.
expect that.
Yes, expect.
Yeah. So families should expect
Yes,
that there'll be some back and forth.
absolutely. And that's where I think, as they get older, it's again more that mediation. Okay, this is our family's expectation. This is what you want to do. Can we meet halfway? And can we work out something that works best? And
Is there a prime way that a parent and kids should tackle this when there is an issue? Is it we need to sit down and have a discussion? Is there best communication practice for resolving those situations, or just however it works for the family?
there's a best communication, but as you said, it's probably different for every family.
Sure.
I do think the one thing that to me we always feel holds true is if you're highly charged emotionally, it is not the time to have these discussions. Even like maybe a young man got in huge trouble at home, and it's okay for one of the spouses, "Hey, this is an important issue. You don't have to react immediately. You can say, "Hey, I want to talk it over with my husband or wife, and then we'll discuss what we're going to do later. We'll sit down and talk." But you don't have to have. I think sometimes parents realize, or feel like if something happens, I have to immediately respond, right at the moment. I think it's probably important for 3-year-olds because otherwise they're going to forget what happened earlier.
Sure.
But for an adolescent, say, "Hey, this is a big deal, but we need to think about." And you can even say, even if you're together, like as a family, said, "We need to think about this a while and figure out what's the best approach. Why don't you think about it too while we're at it?"
Right.
But I do think everybody has a different style. Some people might be able to sit down and say, "These are our family expectations." Their freshman year, we were never that organized. We kind of, as driving came up, as phones came up, we just sort of work through it each step of the way.
Right.
But, someone else might do a different way.
And that's fine too.
Well, and I think too, right, a lot of times it's easy for us to realize something's a problem when it's a problem,
Right.
Like we have, just the other week, I'm picking kids up and they don't want to go home with me, even though she's got a bracelet of beads on her arm. She still wants to make that one more set of bracelets. Or there's a cool basketball game happening in the gym, even though they know they'll be at after school care the next day to play the game, right? And then it's a temper tantrum.
Yes, that.
On the way out, and I'm like, okay, I didn't realize pickups would be a problem, but now I can make a plan for it because it didn't go so well for me in that moment. But now we can proactively teach to that the next day, right? Okay, when I pick you up today, even if you're not super excited, right? We'll just take that deep breath, say, okay, put our stuff on, we'll go home, and maybe we can make the bracelet at home, or maybe we'll shoot a basketball at home, and then being able to praise that when that is the case.
Well, it goes back to this isn't some set of rules like the 10 Commandments, and this is how we live our life. Your boundaries 1 year, probably 2 years later, are going to look incredibly different. Some of your expectations the kids have internalized. It's not even an issue anymore. We've moved on to the next thing,
Yeah, definitely.
One of my daughters, when she was in the middle school ages, she didn't want to have a conversation with you face to face. So we did a writing journal where she could write down her thoughts, her reasons, her reactions, and then my husband and I, we could, write back. Because she just was not comfortable at all with, feeling like I'm on, display right now. So, you talked about differences in how families can work things out. That worked well for her.
Yeah, and I think that's, sometimes we do feel like we have to have that immediate response. And by putting something down, by taking the time to write something down, we're probably more thoughtful, less heated, less, because these are words on a page.
You have to think about it.
Sometimes we say things just in the heat of the moment that can really sting and leave a lasting impact. Where if you know that boundaries are an issue, really thinking about what's the best way for us to have a reasonable conversation about this and really problem solve, because that's what you're trying to do with setting boundaries is create those expectations and problem solve toward that.
Yeah, and I think that's a real important point. It's not like let's figure out a way, I've met some people, it's like, we got to figure out a way to make this painful for the youth. It's like, we got to make this, the consequence painful. That's not your goal. Your goal is to mold that behavior into helping them be successful. And if they agree with, hey, this is your consequence, and I don't know, you broke something, and because you did what you weren't supposed to, he's going to earn extra money doing chores. They feel good about earning it back. But it's not about that punitive, like hurting them. It should be a win-win situation. I mean, obviously there's going to be times, I'm not naive, where there's absolutely, like, I can't believe everybody else has a curfew of 11:30 and I have to be home at 10:30, and why can't you change? And it's like, sorry, that's just,
the way it is.
And you say your reasons. I want to keep you safe. I know nothing great happens after 10:30 at night.
Yeah.
And this is how we are. I'm sorry. That's the way the other families are.
Right.
And I do think with that problem solving, as we're talking about that too, is like the child should be involved as much as possible. And that even from a young age to an older age, they can be involved in that problem solving part to help solve the problem, or what would help them be successful with the boundary that you are setting. And their involvement will get their buy-in to it as well.
Another thing, you were talking about that your curfew type of thing. What I would list a time to be home, and I would get the and then I'd say, so what do you think is a more reasonable time? And it was always interesting to me, like I expected them to say a much later time, and it was like 15 or like 30 minutes longer.
Difference.
Okay, I can give on that.
But they're thinking 30 minutes a week, and then in about a month.
Yeah, right. I'm going to move it really fast.
No, but that's being respectful and treating them as young adult. Hey, you're moving towards young adulthood. We're going to listen to what you have to say, and that's not a bad idea. We'll try it. Let's see how it works.
Yeah, let's go for that. I can live with, instead of 10:30, I can live with 11. But make sure you're home by 11. That type of thing.
Well, that's another. That you mentioned that we didn't have cell phones. That check. And explain. I'm checking not because I want to be a helicopter parent. I want to check in because bad things can happen to people, and I want to make sure you're safe. And I've explained it like if I'm running late, I call my wife and say, hey, I'm running late, because guess what? If I don't call and check in, she starts to worry about me, and vice versa. And so this is about just respecting the your feelings and making sure that we're safe. It's not about coming down on them as a parent.
Right. I want to end on this. Families are so varied, and we have a lot of families that are going to have one kid at almost every age level we've been talking about here, an elementary age kid or a toddler. We may have blended families where they may have high school age kids, and then they have a second group of kids coming up, elementary age or toddler. So in many families, it's not out of line to have somebody that's a toddler, middle school age, and a young adult as well. So when those boundaries are kind of, you're setting different boundaries, but again, it's probably just being consistent with whatever age group you're doing. The consistency is about the only piece that can be consistent there. Is you have to be consistent with toddlers, with
but I think, to your point, there's an overarching theme to your boundaries. It's safe. It's all the things we talked about earlier. It's all
values.
These are the values. These are why these are the. It's going to look different for a 3-year-old than it is for an 18 or 17-year-old or 18-year-old.
Yeah. Well, best advice in closing, Twyla, for those who have young children. What's the best advice you could give them?
Remember that children are wanting to please you. Remember that they've not had as much life experience. They don't really know about some of the safety dangers or some of the things that are happening. But have calm and proactive response to your kids will help them to be successful as they grow older into elementary ages and farther up.
Awesome. And Jackie, for those school-aged and developing kids, what's the best advice you could give a parent?
Yeah, the more we can live in prevention versus dying in correction, the more proactive we can be, the more we can fill their buckets with tools or that tool belt, and loving them outrageously, but teaching relentless. Everything is a teaching opportunity, so let's prepare them for the next phase.
Yeah, give them a heads up of this is going to happen today, this is the expectation, and then when it happens, going back and giving them praise and saying, great job.
Shout that praise as loud as you would want to shout the opposite way, right? Like that praise should be just as big.
Yes, and then advice for those teens, families living in that kind of, I know we need to let you go, you're getting older, I need to, maybe be a little more, allow you to be more independent. What advice do you have for parents there?
I think it's those respectful conversations, that continuing to talk to the adolescent about maybe extending their independence as they're being successful. And I think it's about being a role model. There's nothing more, a great role model says, hey, I don't like this behavior in you, but I'm doing it too, so I'm going to change. I'm going to change at the same time you're changing. That's a powerful message to a young person. Like, I'm willing to change. Why don't you try it too, and let's do it together.
Awesome. Well, we know it's going to happen in every family. There's going to be discussions of boundaries, and there's going to be pushing of boundaries. But really, we hope you can come back to that, learning about it being clear, consistent, caring, really setting the tone, the expectations for your families, and then know you're gonna mess up. Your kids are gonna mess up, but tomorrow's a new day. Try it again, and it's never too late to start creating those boundaries for your family and living more in peace. We hope you found this Avera Family Forum to be helpful today.